Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto manga speculation video. So this is going to be my speculation discussion ahead of the release of Boruto Chapter 64, which according to the app is coming out in 8 days, so I guess that means the 19th is the release, maybe the 18th, I'm not sure. Either way, we're about a week away from the chapter. I don't think any spoilers have come out for it, so we're pretty much just going off what had happened before, like we always do. So, a quick recap of the last chapter. The last chapter wasn't, like, super eventful. It obviously ended on a pretty big moment in that, okay, finally the fight is getting to a point where something could actually happen here. Boruto has gone into this sort of halfway zone between sort of the normal karma stuff that he can do and not quite being Borushiki level, because like he doesn't have the horn and stuff like that, but he seems to have sort of basically the second stage karma without the horn going on here. So Code seems like, oh, finally this is where things are going to get started properly here. And with the main tease in terms of information from Code here about the real strength in a way of the karma mark and sort of what it does is that it adds basically millennia worth of Otsutsuki battle experience onto you, and you gain that, and that's why you don't just have extra power, you also know how to use that power as well. So I think that's what's going on here, that this is they're going to get into, like, basically this is sort of Boruto in the avatar state, Boruto in defense mechanism avatar state, where he is in control himself. He can, get himself out of it. It's not as dire as it is maybe when he's being controlled by Momoshiki directly, but he is going to be sort of influenced here by generations of Otsutsuki that have come before here. So that's why I think we're going to see a bit of a interesting kind of character here out of Boruto, where he won't quite be himself, but he won't quite be as brutal maybe as Momoshiki. And that's the main thing that they need to go into. They probably need to explain what exactly is going on here. Code, in terms of fighting against this, should be able to note sort of how far along the progress is. He should be able to sort of tell us what mode or whatever he is actually in. The other thing we probably need to get addressed here is how the pills are or are not affecting Boruto. The Otsutsukification suppression pills, or whatever you want to call them. Which have been working up to now, but how does this impact things? Because what's happened here is, I don't think this is Boruto having dropped below the level of chakra where Momoshiki takes over. This seems to be just the idea that he has managed to sort of tap into a slightly higher level of karma on his own, and we'll go from here. From here on out, I suppose he does still have to worry about overly draining his chakra, especially if he's now able to do bigger things, because that was still a restriction on Borushiki. Borushiki can't go all out because it risks completely wiping out Boruto's chakra reserve. So that there is that limitation as well. And then of course we have the other limitation, which is that, like, if there's too much absorption going on, Borushiki then, Boruto can take back over. So what's going to happen here when we get into this fight? My guess is that we'll probably see Boruto temporarily overwhelm Code, or Code will be pushed a little bit, but still be in control enough to be like, oh, got to keep my wits about me here. And he'll be able to sort of narrate what exactly is going on as he pushes Boruto further and further to see what he's dealing with. I'd be very surprised if this is just sort of like, no, this is really serious. Like, Code is going to be at risk of being taken out here. I think he seems so sort of calm about, like, just seeing Boruto go into this mode, that I don't think he's overly frightened of what's going on here. Maybe if he saw Borushiki mode, that's what would probably actually scare him, because we're judging that Code is at a level that is basically in or around the level of Jigen during the first fight against Naruto and Sasuke. that he has a limiter on himself that keeps him from his maximum strength, which is actually above that level of Jigen. But it's lower than, full Jigen just before he was about to die when he reincarnated. So we're dealing with, I think, just a little bit lower than that. But it's still very strong, of course. And this mode doesn't seem to be the full extent of the karma. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they do it. Either way, it's going to be a volume opening chapter, I believe. So I don't expect anything too huge to happen here because they'll be doing pretty much a 4-chapter build, I think, to the volume cliffhanger for this volume. So whatever section of the plot we're in right now, we're dealing with sort of a 4-chapter kind of build to something. That this fight is going to go on for probably the next 3 or so chapters, and then something probably big will happen in the 4th one. So my prediction here is more or less that we'll just see a lot of fighting. So I think a good amount of the next chapter is going to be just fight panels. As usual, it's a new stage of the fight. I think they probably will still do their usual thing where they build up into the bigger stuff by having a lot of more kind of fillery stages of the fight. But that we might start to see some kind of bigger moves, attacks come out towards the end. My big question is in the middle of all of this. Like, Kawaki is there, Ada is watching on as well. I don't see Ada joining the battlefield here. She's watching from a distance. Kawaki's right there. And there's a few big things that we're still waiting to happen in the Boruto manga to get us towards the 1st chapter incident, which is Boruto has to get the scar in his eye, and then also Kawaki has to get a karma mark again. Now, the scar in his eye, it sort of in a way fits that, like, this probably makes sense to be the place he gets the scar from. One, because this is a big fight for Boruto. 2, he's going up against Code, whose signature attack is sort of a claw mark slash type thing. So Boruto getting a claw slash across the eye or something like that, it's sort of fitting to a degree. Will it happen here? I'm not sure, but it's at least an option and it sort of fits. Kawaki getting the karma mark to get towards that. The question once again remains, where is he getting it from? Code is not an Otsutsuki, and his karma literally just gives him power. It's not related to the whole karma reincarnation thing anymore. Now, they said a few chapters ago that part of like the will of Ishiki is that he wants Code to eat the fruit of the divine tree, and that will turn him into an Otsutsuki. Then he could plant karma marks. Are we going to get that far? I'm not sure, because I almost get the impression that the planting of the chakra tree or the divine tree isn't going to happen. It's hard to read too much into the incident of like Boruto and Kawaki fighting in the future in terms of like, is the tree active in the background somewhere and they just happen to not be involved at that, or what? There's a lot of major plot events that we sort of have to get to, and we're really dealing with sort of just the starting phase of it right now. Because again, Ten Tails has to come into play. There has to be time if the divine tree gets sort of activated. A sacrifice is made, and who, if anyone, gets sacrificed? It's clearly not Boruto. It's clearly not Kawaki. And even the suggestions from a few chapters ago of like Kawaki suggesting to Boruto that you should implant your own karma mark in someone else. I don't think they do something like that where they have Boruto die and reincarnate in someone, because the only real option for that is either Code or Kawaki. So I don't know, can they do that? Is that maybe what we're going to see here, where Boruto, like, I suppose the craziest sequence of events probably would be Boruto, potentially under the control of Borishiki or something like that, implants his karma mark on Code. Code is then sort of like, what, sacrificed to the divine tree or something like that. Maybe Boruto gets sacrificed but is reborn in Code. That's probably the only way to actually make it all work, is actually to have like Boruto, technically die and reincarnate. But that still means that the only way Kawaki has a karma mark is to take the one from Boruto, which is Momoshiki's one. So it's a tough situation here because the Otsutsukis in play here are Momoshiki, and then there's the potential for Code to become an Otsutsuki. So it's hard to know exactly how they're going to play with this and make it all happen, because they could always choose to greatly expand the scope of the story and introduce other Otsutsuki characters whenever they want to. Because I think we're all expecting that once they get through the sort of, the Naruto and Sasuke-esque kind of situation here of like getting towards the time skip, the incident between Kawaki and Boruto, that the series will go on past that and explore a deeper dive into the Otsutsukis, including the head of the clan and stuff like that. Like, stop the incidents that have ravaged the world from happening ever again, and get to the root of why the Otsutsuki started in the first place. The whole goal of the Otsutsuki seemingly being to achieve godhood eventually, after consuming enough planets. That's what we're looking at, I think, further into the future of the series. But I think we're a long way off from that just yet. Beyond that, there's not actually a lot to speculate on, I think, from the previous chapter. Like I said before, and I think I've been predicting this for the last few chapters, I expect, in terms of other characters arriving on the battlefield, Sasuke probably is still the one most likely to show up first, because he seemed to know what was going on outside the village with the claw marks and sensing which one Code would emerge from. The rest of the village is slowly but surely, I think they've just about caught up with what actually has happened, and so they should be on their way out to the battlefield as well. Now, obviously, it's going to take time for Sasuke to get there, it's going to take time for Naruto and the others to get there, and when these characters eventually arrive, what does that change? Because if Boruto is in full control of whatever mode he's in, you've got to say that Boruto in that mode plus Sasuke probably is a good match against Code. And probably only them sending Demon out onto the battlefield could actually like switch things in the other favor. Now, the big question I think people are probably wondering here is like, okay, what is the result of this incident here? This battle out here just outside the village, on the outskirts of the village. Is this the final battle here? Someone dies here outside the village and we resolve it all here? This is his do or die moment? Or is the way that this happens is that through everything happening, incidents with Boruto, Momoshiki, whatever, somehow Code gets away and brings Kawaki back to base, and we get the scenes that I suppose we've sort of been waiting for, of Ada getting to speak to Kawaki in person and the two meet each other for the first time. Is that's what's going to happen? Might Boruto be the one who actually ends up getting taken and Kawaki is left back in the village? It feels like, to a degree, we're maybe building towards another sort of retrieval arc type situation, since that seems to be the majority of arcs that we do get. But I'd like for them to do something a little bit different. It's hard to say exactly how they do this, just because, again, we have no clue at this point when the time skip is happening. This is what they're set on doing at the moment, but there's so many moving parts with regards to thinking ahead to the future scene with Boruto and Kawaki, just the nature of how the Code's plan has to be executed, which is the sacrifices are either going to be Boruto or it's going to be Kawaki. They're the only two choices in play now at the moment. And can that actually happen? Who knows? The other thing, let's not forget this, is that Amado, again, a few chapters ago, teased the idea that he seemingly has another kind of cyborg character ready to go to join the battle. Now, obviously the speculation is that potentially is a Delta body that he's maybe ready to activate, or I think the other speculation that's probably the most likely is that in a similar way to the fact that he cloned Jiraiya, it's a clone of some other older shinobi, or maybe another Jiraiya clone, who knows. Either way, we're waiting for a lot of that stuff. Like, we know Kashin Koji survived, so he could enter the story again at whatever point he wants, basically. It feels like we're definitely not done with Delta, because we still have to address the whole who is Amado's daughter situation. And then that's not even talking at all about Amado himself, who still remains very intriguing, suspicious in some ways, but then the story, the way he's being presented, is doing everything it can to make you not really be overly suspicious of the character. But there's clearly a lot extra about him that we still need to learn and know about. So there's definitely more to come. It's hard to put your finger on. Is he going to be revealed to be a villain? Is he just going to be revealed to be sort of on their side, but just have a little bit of a motivation of his own that maybe doesn't quite align with the village, but it's not full-on villain? And he just needs like events to play out in a specific way to get what he wants, while the village also gets what they want. That's what I'm not too sure about, in the sense that the only thing I can really think of is he engineering a situation where a divine tree actually gets grown and he's in prime position to get the chakra fruit, because he is amazing at science. He can do anything. He can pretty much, revive anyone, turn anyone into a cyborg, but he can't fundamentally, truly bring people back to life. But maybe through the chakra fruit and the fruit of the divine tree, it fulfills whatever wish he wants. Because again, the reason he joined Kara in the first place, or like the motivation of a lot of the Kara members, was that they were going to receive a wish from Jigen once the fruit was grown, effectively. Now, I don't know how that was actually going to be fulfilled or not. Was it just that they'd have power over the entire world, so he could do anything they want, or is it actual some sort of like a power that can accomplish anything? That gets into the whole idea of just like, we know what happens sort of when an Otsutsuki eats the fruit of the divine tree, but what happens if like a normal person eats it? Now, obviously we have that weird situation of like sort of the genealogy of the Naruto universe, of that like pretty much all humans, especially humans who have jutsu, all ultimately have some like lineage back to Kaguya, because that's why like humans have chakra to a degree in the first place. Now it gets a bit tricky, because that applies to like some people but maybe not others. And then there was the way the Sage's Sixth Path shared chakra, which was kind of different. But it's just trying to, I suppose, roughly bring it all together. But I think that's about as far as I can go. I didn't expect to even go this long, but most of the discussion, as you can tell, was probably more about the long future of the series, more so than what's immediately happening next. I think it's just very difficult to predict. I have a feeling that the next chapter just will go relatively similarly to the last chapter, just with the emphasis more on Boruto's new mode and just the very next stage of all of the other things that we have going on. The village, who's actually going to arrive out to the battlefield once they can track where Boruto is, that sort of thing. I do also wonder, Kawaki is still there, and this is probably my final point here. Will they come back to what basically a lot of the last like 5, 6, 7 chapters were about, which was building to the idea of Kawaki is now at the point where he's basically willing to do anything to protect Naruto. That's how much he cares about Naruto. It's this attachment that he has to this true father figure that has gone potentially a little bit too far. And Boruto seemed to sort of go past that by basically saying, if you're willing to do this to protect Naruto, then I am allowed to do the same thing to protect you. And okay, that's going to affect Kawaki, but he ultimately is still going to care about protecting Naruto. And it seems to, again, be leaning in the direction of the dialogue from the future where Kawaki talks about where I sent Naruto. Is it actually this thing of like, in his desperation to save Naruto, he has sent him somewhere for Naruto's safety, but it comes from a position of almost like desperation over attachment, and that it's not helping the situation, basically. That Kawaki, in putting Naruto wherever he puts him, is affecting the fate of the world alt has just saved one person, when Boruto's perspective is perhaps that, no, we need Naruto to, you know, win the day as well. But again, there's so much ground to cover before we get to the time skip at this point. All I can say is that I'm not predicting a particularly stunning chapter. I think it will be very, very in line with the last couple of chapters. I don't really think we're going to get too many big reveals. And the main prediction probably is just that I would like some sort of explanation about just the mode Boruto is in. And I think at this point that's probably the best we can hope for, just because it is going to be an early volume chapter and they're going to have to build to the bigger stuff. So yeah, they're my thoughts ahead of Boruto Chapter 64. I will be reviewing the chapter the day it comes out, assuming I'm not too busy, but usually I always get them out either the day of or the day after, so check out the channel when the chapter releases. But other than that, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.